Liberals getting taxpayer-funded subsidies, and gentlemen. Several years ago, I engaged a rather vacuous liberal blogger concerning peak oil. This is another phony theory bandied about by the left when their arguments and lawsuits against oil production don't work. But they'll say, but we're running out of oil. It's conceivable that someday we will extract all the Earth's oil, but this will not happen anytime in the near future. The libtard blogger in question, Russell Glasser, regurgitated some nonsense he was hearing on the Motley Tool and put it in a blog post. We're running out of oil, Russie says, and this is several other liberals have picked up on this nonsense. But are we running out of oil? To say yes is rather gratuitous in my opinion. There are plenty of areas in and around the U.S. and in the oceans, even the Arctic, where we have yet to perform drilling. Another reason is that we didn't or still don't have the technology to extract the oil from a given location. An article appearing in The Economist back in April 28, 2005, entitled "The Bottomless Beer Mug: Why the World is Not Running Out of Oil," shows us that those chicken littles on the left who cry, "We're running out of oil," are simply wrong. An excerpt gives us these tidbits. Peter Odell of Rotterdam's Erasmus University points out that since 1971, over 1.5 trillion barrels of oil have been added to our worldwide reserves. Over the same 35-year period, under 800 billion barrels were consumed. One can argue for a world which has been running into oil rather than running out of it. What makes the estimates go up continuously is a combination of economics and innovation. Reserves are constantly revised in line with new discoveries, changes in prices, and technological advances. These revisions invariably add to the reserve base. A few decades ago, the average oil recovery rate from reservoirs was 20%. Thanks to remarkable advances in technology, this has risen to about 35% today, and of course it's conceivable that will continue to rise steadily. But there is a more practical fallacy embedded in the gloomy forecast too. I challenge the idea that the era of discovery is over in oil, says one expert. Thanks to the Cold War and other political constraints on Western investment, much of the world is yet to be explored with the aid of the latest technologies. Most of the oil still undiscovered thanks to Cold War and other political constraints on Western investment called environmentalism. Already the industry, the oil industry that is exploring underwater at depths that were unimaginable a decade or two ago. In the Gulf of Mexico and elsewhere, oil rigs now float atop 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet of water. These marvels of engineering are stuffed with the latest in robotics, electronic sensors, and satellite equipment using fancy multilateral wells that twist and turn in all directions. They can hit giant underwater oil pockets miles away from the rigs. One of the main reasons, as pointed out in The Economist, that we are in our current energy snafu is because industries which produce most of our electricity and make our cars run down the road, nuclear, coal, oil, are under assault by environmentalist wackos. If you block any and all legislation for the construction of nuclear plants, coal plants, and oil refineries, eventually you will have a problem. This is our current predicament. And now getting back to how much domestic oil do we have just here, and not just in the world, but how much is available in the U.S.? A gargantuan amount, to be blunt. According to the U.S. Department of the Interior, this most likely does not include the recent find, this was several years ago, in the Gulf of Mexico, where it's estimated that 3 to 15 billion barrels of oil reside, nor does it include the possibility that there are approximately 200 billion barrels of oil in the Bakken oil play in Montana and North Dakota. It's estimated that we have 102 billion barrels of domestic oil available, with the largest amount available in the Gulf of Mexico. Those figures also don't include the rich oil shale deposits in Colorado, which are greater than Saudi Arabia. Shale oil is expensive to extract, but as several experts have noted, technology continues to advance, and as that continues, shale oil will get cheaper to extract, and we'll be able to drill further down and in harder to reach places. Even if the new discovery in the Gulf of Mexico turns to be out on the lower end of estimates, it will boost our reserves greatly. Recently, there were 150 billion barrels of oil discovered in Canada's tar sands. Canada has plenty of oil. Some geologists are also stating that we have another 50 billion barrels waiting to be extracted in the continental 48. There's also another 70 plus billion barrels in the outer continental shelf, not included in the current Department of Interior estimates. That's more than enough considering Americans consume about 20 million barrels of oil a day, about 60% of it imported from Canada, Mexico, the Middle East, places like Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Nigeria. A study conducted by the Cambridge Energy Research Associates anticipated oil and natural gas production capacity should surge by 25% to 110 million barrels per day by the end of 2015. The result of investments in new and unconventional petroleum sources like oil sand deposits and oil shale. The report also acknowledges the probability of continued oil production declines in the U.S. and Europe's North Sea, but it anticipates considerable increases, especially among OPEC member nations. Increasing our domestic supply would be an added bonus. If we could have the amount of oil we import, this would force other countries to work with us if they still want our business. It would give us leverage, and in the event of a major political upheaval, such as Nigeria has gone through several times in recent years, or disaster somewhere else, middle-class Americans would be able to avoid getting nailed at the pump. To say that we're nearly out of oil is silly and portrays those who say it as nonsensical. So the next time a liberal or some environmentalist wacko uses the argument, oh, well, we're almost out of oil anyway, we need to just shelve it now. Sure, yeah, maybe hydrogen fuel cells will come along. Maybe the Bill Gates of renewable energy might come along in 10 years, and we'll have a cheap energy source that's as reliable as coal, oil, and nuclear. But until then, we should just keep using those. And if they use the argument that, well, we're about out, you can tell them, no, that's false. Technology, it's going to continue to advance, so we're going to be able to extract more oil from areas, do it more efficiently, and do it in places that aren't where we haven't done much of it, like in Canada's tar sands. There's a bunch of oil in there, and then of course the shale oil. As technology advances, we'll be able to extract that quicker and easier.